Hi, welcome to our live. We have new face. Pumpkin. Please enjoy the live. Pumpkin, say hi. New face. It's my lunchtime. I just dropped by, but I should go. 네가 손 빼먹을까봐 이거 하는 거잖아. 손을 왜 빼먹고 난리야. 나봐. 내가 이럴 줄 알았어. 이거 하지 말라고. 자. 내가 이럴 줄 알았어. 그거 언제 갖고 왔어? 어? 내가 이거 하지 말라고 그랬거든.
podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
Robbie Roberts, Julie Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 post-watch morning show. ABC.
Now with so much on the line, more Americans are turning to David Moore and ABC's World News Entertainment program across all of television.
Welcome back, everyone. What is behind the big kid who has everything? Oh, maybe if you're absurdly wealthy, perhaps just a little clueless, the newly released pint-sized Aston Martin James Bond edition. We take a peek by the numbers. A whopping $120,000. That's the price tag of the Aston Martin DB5 Junior No Time to Die edition. It's a collaboration between the famed automaker and Bill car company. Putting this into perspective, that's roughly the cost of 100 years.
나가, 조용히. 나가고, 조용히.
Returning back to planet Earth, $14. That's the average price of a toy sold in the United States. So do not sweat it if you're not getting your kids that James Bond car this holiday season. If my son happens to be watching, the answer is no. We still have lots to get to here on Pride tonight. The deadly shooting at a bus stop in Kentucky. Really more examples of gun violence we have to report until something changes. The tribute pouring in with a love Sex and the City actor. But first, look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
World News Now.
And America This Morning.
The best new video.
Breaking news overnight.
Emergency crews called to the town of Surfside.
U.S. airstrikes hitting targets in Iraq and Syria.
The stories people are talking about.
Oh my! And what to expect in the day ahead.
ABC World News Now and America This Morning.
Starting at 2 a.m. Eastern.
All night to keep you up to date.
With an extraordinary story, the theater salesman was supposed to report a person to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do they protect more going on? How do you do that?
Joint search following the U.S. Marshals as they uncovered the leads in a global manhunt. Is fugitive. Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
This is ABC Live. We're surrounded by
So my question is, President, what are you so afraid of?
Right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
This is American history. A violent white bomb, a brutal attack. 300 Black Americans killed right here in America. Now, it is time to uncover Tulsa's very truth. The proving story brought to light in a new podcast of ABC News. Available now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Now streaming on ABC News Live 2020. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
This is GMA3, what you need to know. GMA3.
The third hour of Good Morning America. If you have to do it.
It's all about you. Lunchtime on ABC.
The FDA just announcing its emergency use authorization for Pfizer booster shots for Americans over 65 and those with compromised immune systems.
The CDC's advisory panel will vote on who should get it and when. Third shots could start as early as Friday.
Crucial meeting to the White House today. The big question: will President Biden be able to unite the Democrats?
progressives and moderates.
The House passed a bill to fund the government and raise the debt ceiling, but it doesn't have support in the Senate.
All that anyone is asking for at this point is to raise the bill to cover the obligations from the Trump years.
An issue that infrastructure plan, the bipartisan $1 trillion one to improve roads and highways, regional infrastructure, and the $3.5 trillion plan to cover these social programs like child care and fighting climate change.
It urged American families to have a child. A familiar face in the trial of Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes. Former Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis taking the stand today. The retired four-star general testified he believed in Holmes so much that in 2013 he became a board member and invested a significant amount of his own money into the company. Mattis said he was captivated by her promise to revolutionize blood testing, which would ultimately fail. She's now pleaded not guilty to 12 counts of fraud. Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, who was also on Theranos' board, may testify as well.
Authorities are cracking down on a TikTok challenge known as Devious Lick that has kids damaging school property. It started earlier this month, prompting students to steal soap dispensers and clog toilets. In some cases, it's become so destructive, schools are shutting down bathrooms for repairs. More than a dozen teenagers are now facing criminal charges. TikTok says it's redirecting hashtags to discourage the behavior. Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal sent a letter to TikTok Tuesday, saying its actions are too little, too late.
TikTok knows that there are 94,000 of these videos relating to destruction and theft of school property.
Most known for his role as the iconic Stanford Flash in Sex and the City, playing a coach confidant appearing in the shop, always finding a way to make us laugh.
Music, the sex, the costume.
You only like it because he gets sharing these photos of him on set. Sharing on Instagram, he was endlessly on screen and in real life. In addition to Sex and the City, he was also known for playing a cutting conman on U.S. Network's The White Collar.
Tweet be kind, always love you all. Approach kindness.
Ever, Conor McGregor may have the competition beat with this throw. As the bet outside and way past the cusp actually feels. The buttoned-up MMA star's throw drew comparisons to another worst contender, 50 Cent's throw this at Chess City Field back in 2014. And recently, Dark apparently 350 with that hard left curve. In McGregor's defense, he is nursing a leg injury from July during his bout with Dustin Poirier.
Now to the deadly shooting at a school bus stop in Louisville, Kentucky. It's part of an alarming rise in gun violence across the country. A 16-year-old boy was killed and 2 others injured when someone drove by and fired shots into the booth. ABC's Chief Justice Correspondent Peter Thomas reports.
It was a routine morning as parents sent their teenage children to a bus stop in Louisville. Then,
There are now investigators under the shooting. It was at the bus stop where multiple children were waiting for the bus.
just after 6:30 a.m., a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old boy shot before heading to Eastern High School. The 16-year-old, who has not been identified, died.
They respectfully violated this rainy Wednesday morning by fire. And a team that should be in school today will not be there and will never be there again.
Police say it was a drive-by shooting. Suspects still at large.
A vehicle drove by and fired shots into the group of kids, striking 2 of the children by gunfire.
Authorities released the image of this great chief they're looking for. The city and the neighborhood are traumatized.
I had a hold of those boys alone today and tell me he's going to be okay.
The scene in Louisville is one playing out across the country as the nation is still in the midst of a massive surge in gun violence that has continued over 3 years. So far this year, a staggering 43,644 people shot, compared to 40,000 over the same time frame last year.
staggering numbers there. Pierre Thomas joins us now. Pierre, what steps are the Louisville police taking tonight to try drowning wildfire season out with fuel by climate change have been a major test for the nation's new Secretary of the Interior. Congressman from New Mexico, first American to hold the first indigenous member of the White House cabinet. Tonight, Senator Kevin Dwyer goes one-on-one with Congress at the history of his making and historic challenges he faces.
I bring that perspective, and I bring the very strong priority to ensure that our native voices are heard.
For Deb Holland, first leader to in a presidential cabinet, a seat at the table comes with a weighty sense of responsibility.
I also stand on the shoulders of so many people who have come, so many tribal leaders who have come before me.
The Department of the Interior she leads manages more than 480 million acres of public land that once belonged to tribes and agencies that first assimilation of indigenous people. We're committed to taking a job in the federal government, given that history.
Well, because my dad was a 30-year career Marine, my mother was in the Navy. I came from a family of service to our country.
As secretary, she oversees the National Parks, Protection of Endangered Species, and leasing of resource-rich federal forests and oil fields for use by private industry.
In this time of climate change, bearing down upon us that indigenous knowledge about our natural world will be extremely valuable and important. It's not just the Department of the Interior. Indian tribes have been on this continent for millennia, for tens of thousands of years. They know how to take care of the land.
But her passion for the land, her heritage, and for curbing climate change have made Holland a lightning rod.
You said that if you had your way, and I quote, you'd stop oil and gas leasing on public lands. As secretary, I get to have it your way.
Senator, it's my understanding that it is a pause on just new leases, not existing valid leases.
Her ongoing review of the federal oil and gas leasing program has been a major flashpoint in her tenure. Her boss, President Biden, wants to ban new leases entirely to curb emissions.
It has the potential to cost jobs here in the United States, good paying energy jobs. It has the potential to increase costs for consumers.
The scrutiny of fossil fuels comes as Holland helps confront historic droughts and wildfires fueled by climate change, now ravaging the West. The Interior Department has deployed millions in federal relief funds and spent on recruitment of government firefighters. Last month, Holland announced renovation plan that would encourage access for communities of color.
It's a history, right? All Americans, and we need to make sure that we're telling everyone's history.
Enough has been done, and yet still reconcile the history.
A tremendous amount of work to do, but I feel very confident that the National Park Service is listening.
Some Native American groups are rallying out demands that Holland do more to control their land, including some tribal management.
It is a fight for all peoples, because we know when indigenous peoples are back in our lands, all people benefit. Native peoples knew how to manage and work with the fire as a natural element. We knew how to do that.
We absolutely are listening, right? And it's so important that those voices are heard.
She says acknowledging diverse stakeholders in America's lands is a critical step for equity and justice. Her approach is guided by a belief that representation is power.
This is our ancestral homeland, right? This is Native Americans. This is our ancestral homeland. We're not going anywhere. This is land we care about. humble beginnings can become a cabinet secretary, and our American dream is still alive.
For ABC News, I'm Devin Dwyer in Washington.
It's still alive and dear thanks to Devin for that. Before we go tonight, the image of the day. This is Betty Reed's Huskin at a birthday cake ceremony for 100th birthday at the school that was just named after her. She had the school named after her because she is the oldest full-time National Park Service ranger in the entire United States. She currently leads tours at the World War II home of Rosie the Riveter. Betty was actually born about 20 years before World War II even started. That is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for staying with us. Coming up in the next hour, staying on top of several things in the state of New York, creating a steel barrier against the migrant crisis on the border stunt. Or is it effective? And growing concerns about the dangers posed by some using Facebook Marketplace with bad intentions. Stay with us.
It's an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do they catch her for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in the global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive? Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcast.
These powerful stories of our time, anytime, Nightline. Now streaming on ABC News Live 2020. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues, the hunt. True crime 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about
most days. Smarter. TV 13 now streaming on ABC News Live. It's all about you.
Ready? Let's do it. Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now. This is what we're doing. Let's go. Somebody Yes, what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live? What would you do? I guess I'm talking about What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live. This is ABC News Live.
We're surrounded by
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Stream straight to you anytime, anywhere.
Just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us. Hi there, I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We're monitoring several developments here at ABC News at this hour. Closing arguments have begun in R. Kelly's trial in Brooklyn after his defense arrested today, and R. Kelly confirmed that he will not be taking the stand. The prosecution making its closing arguments to jurors claiming that Kelly used quote lies, manipulation, threats, and physical abuse to dominate his victims and his money and persona to quote hide his crimes in plain sight. Beginning Friday, the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. will display clothing and other items in possession of Trayvon Martin, when the 17-year-old was fatally shot and killed back in 2012. The items will be part of the museum's Legacies Gallery, exploring the failures of Reconstruction and the impacts on present-day America. And if you live in New York City and bought a Mega Millions lotto ticket while grabbing a slice, check your numbers. One ticket sold at Pronto Pizza in Midtown Manhattan for last night's drawing matched all 5 numbers, and the Mega Vault with a cool $432 million jackpot. This is not the first time the pizza joint has sold a plate winning ticket. The owner said that they've sold $1 million and $3 million winners in the past. Now, some breaking news on a high-stakes decision on boosters. The FDA has now authorized a booster dose of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine for people 65 and older, and also for those who are at risk, including frontline workers. That means millions could now receive a new shot as soon as Friday. Our CBS Insomnia reports.
The FDA is saying yes tonight to the Pfizer booster shot, which means that Americans who already had 2 shots of the Pfizer vaccine could get a third as early as Friday.
It's a reasonable decision to provide a third dose to people for whom it appears that immunity is weakening and severe infection is increasing risk in the age of Delta.
At the CDC, they're still debating tonight who all should be getting the extra shot, focusing on people who are 65 and older, or who have health conditions that put them at greater risk to COVID, or frontline workers like nurses or grocery store workers. The shots are already making a difference. Our medical team has found that in states where the fewest people are vaccinated, the death rates are nearly 4 times higher than in states that lead the country in vaccinations. Health officials now believe that an extra dose will eventually become the new standard.
At the end of the day, I believe the correct regimen is going to be 2 doses at first, and a few months later, the third dose. For J&J, it will be the first dose, followed a few months later by the second dose.
Americans who've gotten Moderna and Johnson & Johnson vaccines will have to wait at least a few weeks for approval from the federal government on boosters. But already, 2 million Americans with compromised immune systems have been cleared to get a third shot from Pfizer. 34-year-old Allison Rogers has Crohn's disease. She got her extra shot in Portland.
I wouldn't be too hesitant about it, especially if you've already gotten the second one. The third one is kind of a breeze. I got it on a Saturday, and by Monday I was back at work.
All this planning for millions of booster shots for Americans and people around the world looking sideways at drug makers, wondering why they're not sharing their formulas with manufacturers and countries where there isn't enough vaccine to go around. On a virtual COVID summit today with the United Nations, President Biden announced that the U.S. is now agreeing to buy another 500 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine for the rest of the world, for a total of 1.1 billion doses that America is giving to people overseas.
For every 1 shot we've administered today in America, we are now committed to do 3 shots to the rest of the world.
The president vowing to have some equity there among the vaccine shots in the global community. Our thanks to CBS Insomnia for that. A steel barrier of state-owned vehicles is the Texas governor's latest attempt to try to curb the influx of migrants crossing the border. This as President Biden continues to face bipartisan backlash, all while the DHS announced removal flights will continue. ABC's Kenneth Moten is back at the border for us tonight.
Tonight, the so-called steel barrier of vehicles. Texas state troopers lining the Del Rio, Texas border as federal authorities try to stop the migrant surge.
Today, are we seeing migrants crossing back and forth here in Del Rio? Very minimal here, very minimal here.
A big difference here today compared to the weekend when we saw more than 13,000 migrants in this encampment. As migrants leave, others taking their materials to fortify their shelters.
Still here, roughly 5,000 migrants, mostly Haitian, mostly families with small children. The administration facing tough criticism over its handling of the crisis, even from Democrats.
The Biden administration must immediately and indefinitely halt all deportations of Haitian migrants.
Tonight, some migrants now being sent to Houston and other cities as they seek asylum. Many staying with families and sponsors. Our Cecilia Vega pressing the White House today, hours after the DHS secretary once again declined to give specific migrant numbers to lawmakers.
Do you have the numbers? How many Haitians have been deported? How many have been processed? And how many have been allowed to stay in the United States?
I certainly understand why you're asking, and understand why people have been asking Secretary Mayorkas. Those are numbers that are the Department of Homeland Security would have the most up to date.
And tonight, amid outrage, DHS saying that mounted Border Patrol agents seen aggressively trying to stop migrants from entering Texas have now been placed on administrative duties. They will have no contact with migrants pending the outcome of that ongoing investigation.
So that investigation is still ongoing. Kenneth Moulton, he is live there from Del Rio, Texas. Kenneth, officials have released some numbers late tonight on the number of migrants now returning to Haiti. What kind of numbers are we looking at?
Lindsay, as we push the Biden administration before those numbers, the Department of Homeland Security says since Sunday, more than 1,000 migrants have been flown back to Haiti, and those flights will continue. Lindsay?
Kenneth Moulton, our thanks to you. Now to the political showdown in Washington as the White House works to salvage the president's sweeping domestic agenda. The president holding marathon meetings with members of his own party today. Joining us now is Congressman Mark Pocan of Wisconsin, a former chair of the Progressive Caucus, who met with President Biden at the White House this evening with other lawmakers. First of all, thanks so much for joining us, Congressman. Just tell us about your meeting with fellow progressives that just wrapped up a little while ago. How did it go, and what was your message to the president?
Well, the good news is the president's Build Back Better agenda is comprised of two bills, the Build Back Better Act and the infrastructure bill. And we're going to get both of those done in Congress, and we're very anxious to help the president get those two bills done. And I think we really just had a lot of a strategy session on how to make sure we're getting these done for the American people. I mean, there's big stuff in these bills that are going to help provide a tax break for 40 million American families through the child tax credit. And there's going to be a lot of lowering of costs of things from prescription drugs to universal child care to paid leave in the bills. There's going to create millions of jobs, many with a focus on climate change. And the best part is this is all paid for. Finally, folks who are making over $400,000 a year and corporations that have largely either avoided taxes or hid them overseas are going to pay their fair share. So it's a good, big agenda. It's important for the American people, and we're just excited to be there to help the president get this done.
I think a lot of people appreciate your optimism that this will get done. I guess the question is how. Of course, the president met separately with moderates and with leaders in Congress earlier today. So what did he say to your group to try to bring everyone together?
Sure. Well, I think, these are all values that especially Democrats are going to be anxious to talk about to their constituents, whether it will deliver for the American people. There may be a handful or two people who, are maybe voicing some concerns. You have to remember, every special interest in this town in Washington, D.C., that's going to pay more taxes or somehow not be able to charge people more for prescription drugs is trying to stop this. And the fact that it's only a handful or two people and there's hundreds of others going to get this done is pretty significant. So we can go get this done at the end of the day, because I think every Democrat is going to want to be able to show their constituents that they got big things done that are actually going to improve their lives. And it's just a matter of a couple more weeks, and I think this will be something that we're all going to really be celebrating.
And you and other progressives have threatened to block the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure bill next Monday unless there is a deal with Senate Democrats on the larger $3.5 trillion social spending package. Is that still your position after meeting with the president today?
Well, the plan that the president has is comprised of these two bills, so it's kind of like they're twins. You can't separate one without the other. And that's our attitude. That's been the attitude of Nancy Pelosi for months. That's what the president and others have said, and that's how we're going to get them done as twins. We're not going to leave one behind. So again, I really don't think there's as much controversy as people may think. Some individual members may be voicing some concerns, but the vast majority of Democrats are excited to get this done for the American people, and I'm quite confident the next few weeks we will.
Not much controversy except for the price tag, really. I mean, your moderate colleague, Representative Josh Goffmeyer of New Jersey, said after his meeting that everyone, including the president, wants to pass the bills next Monday, but he and Senator Manchin are concerned about that $3.5 trillion price tag on the larger package. Did the president raise the idea of a smaller figure, perhaps, or encourage any kind of compromise?
I think people, should make sure that they refresh their remedial math skills from elementary school, because the part that's really important is this bill doesn't cost taxpayers anything. It is only from additional revenues from people who make more than $400,000 a year. Corporations largely don't pay taxes or have their profits overseas. So there's not really a cost to this bill for the average family that's going to see these benefits. So, to debate a number when the cost is actually zero means, there may be a little misguided on that focus. What we should really talk about is, do you want to have child care in this country and poverty in place for a long time?
Do we want to make sure that we're expanding the options available through Medicare? The answer will be yes, yes, and yes from every Democrat. Even people who are voicing concerns, and that's why we'll get this bill done. But I think it's important to note that people who make less than $400,000 won't be paying anything additional to get this done.
Speaker Pelosi spoke to reporters briefly after meeting with President Biden and said, quote, "We are on schedule, we are calm, and everybody's good, and our work is almost done." Is she right? But do you believe that that vote will still happen next Monday on this smaller bipartisan bill?
Yeah, I think maybe we're focusing on the wrong thing. The focus is really getting these two bills done within the next several weeks. People have been talking clearly, a bunch of us today at the White House, and because of these conversations, I'm quite convinced that, very soon you will see both bills go together, as we've said from the beginning, tandem, to get the president's agenda done, and it will be a big win for the American people.
Congressman Feat.Pumpkin, we thank you so much for your time tonight.
Absolutely, thank you.
Now to the Michigan dad who says a teacher cut his daughter's hair in school without permission. ABC's Janae Gorman has the latest on how he's fighting back and pushing for change.
The father wants answers. How could anyone think they could touch another person's hair? Get away with it. And they insulted my daughter. He says a 57-year-old daughter drew his hair strands without permission. Her hair is damn. They're now suing two teachers in the school district for $1 million in damages, saying his daughter suffered mental and emotional distress, relation, and anxiety as a result of what happened. She is still upset about it. She talks about it. Like, I think it might be going better than that. Like, she's always been that daily. Let's face it, taking place in March, Jordan had just gotten a new professional asymmetrical haircut after a classmate cut a piece of her hair on the school bus. Jordan's dad says 2 years later, a teacher cut her hair again, reportedly with the intention of making the different lengths less obvious. The lawsuit adding the incident was racially motivated. Jordan identifies as biracial. The teacher is white.
For a long time now, we've had circumstances in which we have not been viewed as good enough because of the way we look, because of our hairstyle.
The school launched an independent investigation and ruled that although the teacher was wrong, the act was well intentioned. The school district denied any racial motivation, adding in a statement to ABC News, they are confident that the facts will prevail and will aggressively defend against these baseless allegations in court, and will allow us to distract them from their mission to provide every child a world-class education. Push for the Brown Act, a law aiming to protect against discrimination for race-based hairstyles. This is so that people protect their hair because our hair is our identity. And we call it now creating a respectful open world for natural hair, because we're trying to create a respectful open world for all of us. Our thanks to Janae for that. And still ahead, the strong earthquake in Toronto, Australia's largest city, catching many by surprise. And welcome to a remarkable mission to meet new friends.
It's an extraordinary story.
The computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do they capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in the global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive? Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join me all new wherever you get your podcasts.
This is American history. A violent LaaLaa, a brutal attack. 300 Black Americans killed right here in America. Now, it is time to uncover Tulsa's very truth. The gripping story brought to light in a new podcast from ABC News. Available now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
Welcome back. We're tracking several international headlines at this hour. Startling moments down under after magnitude 5.9 earthquake struck near Melbourne, Australia early this morning. Geoscience Australia reported the epicenter of the quake in the town of Mansfield. Videos on social media showed damage to buildings and rubble on the streets. Prime Minister Scott Morrison, who's currently in Washington, D.C., told reporters there were no reports of serious injuries and noted that earthquakes of that nature were rare. His General Assembly, the health minister minister confirmed the news on his Twitter account and said he would quarantine in the U.S. and follow all health and safety protocols. Video from the UN General Assembly shows the health minister shaking hands with Britain's Boris Johnson just 1 day before. And fire crews on the Canary Islands continue to deal with the volcano eruption on LaaLaa. Crews are going to try to block the lava from moving toward the ocean by using tractors to dig trenches. The government reports the lava is moving nearly 13 feet every hour. More than 400 buildings have been destroyed so far. Joining us now is ProPublica reporter Craig Silverman, one of the authors of a new report on Facebook's marketplace platform where users can buy, sell, and trade with each other. Craig, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Your new story describes how people are being taken advantage of on this site. What's happening exactly?
Yeah, thanks for having me. The marketplace, as you say, is a place where people can buy, sell, and trade with each other. And what we found is that there's just a huge amount of scams. As the marketplace has grown over the last few years, it just hit 1 billion users per month this year. You can see that there is just a massive increase in scams, especially as the pandemic saw marketplace and other services like it really explode in popularity. And we looked at what Facebook does to try and rein in scams. We looked at their systems, and we found it very easy to find scam vehicle posts, scam posts that we really a lot buying a new PlayStation 5. We found hundreds of accounts posting thousands of listings for banned supplements using really hypersexualized ads. And so it seems like a platform that follows the path that we've seen with some other Facebook's other services, where there's a lot of things that are great tools, but Facebook is not able to rein it in, and there are a lot of people who are getting scammed, or losing money, or getting harassed, and in some cases even being victims of violent crime because the platform really is lacking a certain level of oversight now.
Well, as you know, those scammers have been preying on people online for decades. Your story notes that the Craigslist and eBay have had similar issues. So what makes this different?
Yeah, it started with the Facebook factor, which is often about scale. There are about 3 billion people around the world on Facebook. There are 1 billion of those folks who are going to Marketplace every month, and Craigslist is really on the decline. The marketplace is exploding, and so what Facebook does is it scales products really quickly. It's now in more than 100 Facebook with 1 billion people per month on there. It's really exploded, and the other part of it is that the thing that should make it better and prevent scams on Facebook, the profiles and the supposed real names, that's actually being turned into a tool of the scammers. We found tons of hacked accounts, tons of fake accounts, and they are being used to scam people. So somebody who looks very credible, maybe a real estate agent posting listings for an apartment rental, well, that's actually someone who has hacked their account, posting pictures that have been stolen from a real listing, and they're going to steal your money for deposits. So people really have to be on guard with Facebook and realize that this is a global platform with global scammers coming after you.
Now, Facebook told ProPublica as well as ABC News that they're constantly retooling their platform and quote, we are working to improve our enforcement and deliver the highest quality peer-to-peer marketplace available. What's your response to that?
Well, look, it's not that Facebook does nothing. They do have, systems that are supposed to detect posts that are obvious scams or violate the rules in other ways. They have a few hundred contractors who are kind of reviewing things that get flagged. The problem is that with 1 billion users, they've got a few hundred people, and they've got these automated systems that are missing obvious scams. And so it's really an ineffective approach right now. That is what we're seeing. And with Facebook, they scale the product first, and the security and the safety measures just haven't caught up, which again is kind of a pattern that you see with Facebook products overall. And Marketplace, relatively new, launched in 2016. You would think sort of that Facebook had evolved and understood that maybe they shouldn't launch in 150 countries until they really train the systems well and are doing a good job preventing scams.
So I think you may have just answered my next question, which was going to essentially be, what should Facebook be doing? Conversely, I'll ask, what should people who use this Facebook marketplace be?
A bunch of obvious signs of these scams, which again, Facebook systems should catch. But for the average person, I mean, if you see a kind of a high-ticket item like a vehicle, PlayStation 5, an iPhone, and it is priced suspiciously low, that is a big red flag. If you look at the account that has posted the item, you click on their name in Marketplace, it's going to open up and you can see all the other listings they've posted. If they are posting the same item in different states all across across the United States, and obviously it's not available locally. That's a huge red flag right there. It's also a big red flag if they try to get you to pay before you can actually see the item. This was a big thing during the pandemic where people would say, well, you can't see the apartment, or I can't meet you in person because of the pandemic, so just send me a transfer of the money and I'll ship it to you and send you a tracking code. Well, if you are dealing with someone in person, you're going to need to meet them in person. Do not fall for that. Make sure you can see it. And if you are going to meet them, also be safe about it. One of the best things you can do is actually agree to meet in a local police station parking lot. Some of them have actually created safe exchange zones where you can come, you can park, you can do the exchange and everything. It's on camera. And obviously, if somebody is unwilling to meet you there, then that's a hint that perhaps they were actually intending to rip you off.
And Craig, lastly, the New York Times recently reported that Facebook is changing the way it's responding to controversies and criticism. We've reported on this company for quite some time now. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I think Facebook, if a lot of people inside Facebook, especially leadership, feel like they've been getting beat up for the last 5 or 6 years, right? Ever since basically 2016, an election, and then there was Cambridge Analytica and all these other scandals. And they feel like they've done a lot of investing in new safety and security protocols, kind of like in the quote that you read from their spokesperson, and then a lot of this stuff is unfair. And so I think they're deciding to try and push back. And I think they also really want to be able to move on. They want to launch new products and have the focus be on that rather than the harm and the unintended consequences of what happens when they're doing things. So I think we're going to see Facebook be more aggressive on reporting because ultimately, they don't want to be seen as a negative force at all. They want to try to change that perception.
Craig Silverman, thank you so much for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now it is Hispanic Heritage Month, and the ever-growing debate about how people in the diverse community identify whether it is Hispanic, Latino, or Latinx. ABC's Gio Benitez breaks it all down for us.
We don't care. We do not want to be labeled Latinx. With all these people using it, there must be good reasons for adopting the term Latinx. This is Latinx is Hispanic, or maybe it's Chicano or Latinx. Hispanic. Latino, Hispanic. These terms are used to identify people like gender, country, and language. So let's break it down. Perhaps the most used in America is Hispanic. The Pew Research Center says some use it to describe people with roots specifically in Spain or other Spanish-speaking countries. Anyone with roots in Latin America, regardless of language. And Latinx, that's if you want to be gender neutral. But it turns out Latinx, a word created for gender inclusivity, has plenty of critics.
Latinx. Please stop it.
One Pew survey found only 3% of Hispanics identify as Latinx, and some argue using these labels excludes the Afro-Latino community and erases culture and diversity.
I think in a lot of ways it strips our respective groups, right? Whether it be Mexicano, Chicano, whether it be from Nicaragua, from Guatemala, there's a lot of differentiation and distinctness that I believe we all need to honor.
And to do that, it means bridging the generational gap.
We need to have the dialogue with the elders and education and real understanding. This is about inclusivity.
Our thanks to Gio for that. Make a new friend and save the environment. We meet one remarkable girl who is on a mission to turn old bottle caps into benches to make new friends, calling them buddy benches. ABC's Will Gans explains.
Sammy Vance is a 7th grader in Indiana on a mission to bring people together.
A buddy bench is a way to little thing that can sit on the buddy bench and another person can coach them and ask them to play and then play together.
4 years ago, she launched a project, Buddy Benches, challenging her community to donate bottle caps that would be recycled into a bench.
At the time, it took 100 pounds of plastic caps just to get one buddy bench. So we made a goal for ourselves to get one buddy bench in 1 year.
4 years and 200 benches later.
Right before a new bottle bench was $900. Doing it this way, now it's 200 pounds of caps and $200.
Sammy's Buddy Benches are a hit.
I had no idea that beginning they would trend to anything like this at all. It's a huge surprise. So sometimes it's surprising to me. We went out there and the girl sat down less than 2 minutes. 2 kids ran up and asked her to play. The way that Sammy did it teaches about the environment too.
Her message, bringing people together on a buddy bench and
behind the cause that's building them, uniting her Indiana community.
Little girl had the dream, and at the time she rarely spoke. And so now she is speaking to crowds and speaking to schools and kids, all because there's making a difference.
Schools across the state, and the country, even in India and Mexico, watching their own Bunny Bench projects. That's your message to the people who are inspired by your story, want to make a difference, but may be nervous to take that first step.
One small thing can make a huge difference and a huge impact. So just opening the door for someone is making a huge difference in their life because you never know what they're going through.
Sammy saying you don't need to be a big person to make a big difference.
Sammy already making quite a difference. Our thanks to all of them. That's our show for tonight. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. Have a great night. Davis, thank you so much for streaming with us. Have a great night.
An extraordinary story.
Peter salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No report.
Stop today. Capture for 25 years. How do you do that?
Now, join the search following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in the global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive? Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it. Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now. This is what we're doing. Let's go. How are you? Yeah, so what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live? What would you do? I guess I just found out. What would you do marathon? 12 to 6 Eastern every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show, ABC's
Americans choose ABC News. America's #1.
Tonight, breaking news as we come on the air. The key FDA decision is now in on boosters for millions of Americans. This decision involving a third Pfizer shot. Tonight, we have late reporting from whom and when. At the same time, the CDC advisory panel they'll decide now on special guidance moving forward. Steve Osensabe reporting from the CDC. Also tonight, the new images coming in from the early search for Brian Laundrie. Divers and drones now called in searching 25,000 acres of snow. A person enters the case of Gabby Petito and what we're now learning. The deadly drive-by shooting while students were waiting for their kids to go to school. One student did not survive. So the little claim the scene looked horrifying and devastating. This scene along with southern part tonight, Texas Governor Greg Abbott using state-owned vehicles to create what is called a steel barrier with the migrant crisis on. And there is news tonight from some of those border patrols seen on horseback confronting migrants. Crucial news that the White House would behind the sweeping infrastructure spending plans. Senior Vegas tonight with Speaker Pelosi today about whether this will happen. We'll see tonight how and what he thinks the law destroying hundreds of homes, forcing mass evacuations tonight. James Longman on the scene. Traffic severe storms from the Georgia all the way to the Northeast. Heavy wind windows of 70 miles per hour. And the tornado as we come on in Pennsylvania. Tonight, cars and fans paying tribute to actor Willie Garson. Best known for his role on Sex in the City. And Erica Strong tonight, the oldest park ranger in America. She has just turned 100. From ABC News World Headquarters.
Decisions of Moderna and Johnson & Johnson boosters could come in weeks. ABC Steele's stopping with the breaking headline. The CDC in Atlanta breaking down who these boosters will. The FDA is sending this to the Pfizer booster, which means that Americans who already gotten 2 shots of the Pfizer vaccine could get a third as early as Friday.
It's a reasonable to provide a third dose to people for whom it appears that remaining and severe infection, increasing risk in the age of Delta.
At the CDC, they're still debating tonight who all should be getting the other shot, focusing on people who are sick and older, who have health conditions that put them at greater risk of COVID, or frontline workers who put them at high risk. The shots are already making a difference. The medical team has found that in states where the most people are vaccinated, the death rates are nearly 4 times higher than in states that lead the country in vaccinations. Health officials now believe that an extra dose will eventually become the standard.
At the end of the day, I believe the correct measurement would be 2 doses at first, and a few months later, a third dose. The J&J would be the first dose, followed a few months later by the second dose.
Americans who've gotten Moderna and Johnson & Johnson vaccines will have to wait at least a few weeks for approval from the federal government boosters. But there are already 2 million Americans with compromised immune systems have been cleared to get a third shot from the 34-year-old Allison Rogers has Crohn's disease. She got her extra shot.
I wouldn't be too hesitant about it, especially if you got the second one. The third one is kind of a breeze. I got it on a Saturday, and by Monday I was back to work.
All of this plans millions of booster shots for Americans around the world looking sideways at drug makers, wondering why they're not sharing their formulas with manufacturers and countries where there isn't enough vaccine to go around. Virtual COVID summit today with the United Nations. President Biden announced that the U.S. has now agreed to buy about 500 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine for the rest of the world. 1.1 billion doses. America is giving the people overseas.
For every 1 shot administered to America, we are now committed to do 3 shots to the rest of the world.
The breaking news from the CDC tonight is dealing with something else as well that was somewhat encouraging. It's just like the forecast models. The CDC tells us more about what it shows potentially in the U.S. by spring. And all those, there are many variables here.
Researchers are on with a new forecast model that they say looks hopeful. It shows that the number of cases and deaths are likely to be falling through the spring as long as we don't see another outbreak of the COVID variant.
Steve was stopping in Atlanta tonight. Steve, thank you. We're returning next week to search for that person of interest, Brian. That search intensified. The death of Gabby Petito now ruled a homicide. Divers have now been called in in the search of that alligator-infested nature reserve. They are now using high water vehicles since much of that area is covered with waste and water. ABC's Trevor Walt from Florida tonight.
New images of the intense search for Ryan laundry. Authorities bringing in a specialized dive team to search the 35,000-acre reserve, area twice the size of Manhattan, alongside their ATVs, drones, and K9 units. 75% of the area underwater.
We are trying to cover every acre. Our law enforcement partners, they're motivated and they're hungry.
And the public reporting thousands of tips with rumors Bryant had been captured overnight, proving false.
Callers advising that it's a civilian, possibly named Brian Laundrie.
And today, Okaloosa County officials reporting they've identified the man from this trail cam image, and it's not Brian Laundrie. Neighbors say they last saw Brian back at home days before Gabby was reported missing. Despite the FBI raiding the Laundrie home Monday, the coroner saying Gabby's death is a homicide, Brian remains a person of interest, not a suspect.
They have a dead body, and they have him driving the car, her car away from the city, all the way from Mountain West to Florida. To me, that's about what it was.
And officials in Utah releasing a new witness statement from an altercation between the couple last month where police were called in. The reason part, I think the male took the female's phone. It appeared that he didn't want her in the van, adding, from my point of view, something definitely didn't seem right. Crews are now wrapping up their search for the night. David, if the authorities charge Brian in Gabby's death, that would make him a fugitive, and anybody who may be held by the authorities would then be committing the crime himself, but without a charge, Brian is free to run, and other people, in theory, can only do one mile high. And Trevor, live for us again in Florida tonight. Trevor, thank you. We are alerting the witness evening after a deadly shooting at a school bus stop in Louisville, Kentucky, while students were waiting for the bus to go to school. Part of an alarming rise in gun violence across the country. A 16-year-old boy was killed in this case. 2 others were injured. Tonight, police are asking for the public's help. And here's Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas.
It was a routine morning as parents sent their teenage children to the bus stop in Louisville. Then, just after 6:30 a.m., a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old boy shot heading to Eastern High School. The 16-year-old has been identified as
That sacred space was violated in Grady Wednesday morning by gunfire. And a team who should be in school today will not be there and will never be there again.
They say it was a drive-by shooting. Suspect still at large.
A vehicle drove by and fired shots into the group of kids, striking 2 of the children by gunfire.
Authorities releasing the image of this great team they're looking for. The city and the neighborhood are traumatized.
I had a hold of little boy's wound today and tell him he's going to be okay.
The scene in Louisville is one playing out across the country as the nation is still in the midst of a massive surge in gun violence that has continued over 3 years. So far this year, a staggering 43,644 people shot. At the same time, she said today that she has seen officers and targeted repeat offenders, but that she is frustrated by the availability of guns and judges that she believes are committing against suspects who illegally carry firearms.
Our Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas with us. Thank you, Pierre. There are news coming in with this surge of migrants at the border in Texas. The governor there is in place of laws aimed the fleet of state people send a message to migrants. And tonight there is border people even seen those images of migrants called ABC's Kevin Bowman from Texas.
Tonight, this so-called still buried vehicle, Texas state troopers lining the Texas border as federal authorities try to stop the migrant surge.
Today, all we're seeing migrants crossing back and forth here and there. Here, there's animal here. Here today, compared to the weekend, we saw more than 60,000 migrants in this encampment. As migrants leave, migrants taking their materials from their shelters.
Still here, 1,000 migrants, mostly Haitian, mostly families with small children. The administration facing tough criticism over its handling of the crisis, even from Democrats.
The Biden administration has immediately and indefinitely closed all deportations of Haitian migrants.
Some migrants now being sent to Houston and other cities as they seek asylum. Many staying with families and sponsors. Our Cecilia Vega, pressing the White House today. Hours after the DHS secretary once again declining to send $100 to lawmakers.
Do you have the numbers, how many patients have been reported, how many have been processed?
I certainly understand why you're asking and understand why people have been asking Secretary Mayorkas. Those are numbers that are, the Department of Homeland Security would have.
And tonight, outrage DHS saying they have to. Agencies aggressively trying to stop migrants from Texas have now been placed on administrative duties. They have no contact with migrants pending the outcome of that ongoing investigation.
And Kevin Bowman is from Texas again tonight. And Kevin, we saw Cecilia press the White House there today for members of officials late today have now released some numbers tonight on the number of migrants now returned to Haiti.
David, as we push for numbers, the Department of Homeland Security says since Sunday, more than 1,000 migrants have been flown back to Haiti. Those flights will continue.
David, Kevin in Texas again tonight. Thank you, Kenneth. Now to the crucial meeting to the White House today. The big question will President Biden be able to unite Democrats, progressives, and moderates to get to the latest sweeping infrastructure and spending plans. There are 2 tracks here: the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure plan and what Democrats are calling the $3.5 trillion human infrastructure plan, including paid leave and early education. Speaker Pelosi has said along the way that that bigger plan must get passed first in the House, then they would take up the bipartisan bill. Is that still the plan? Can they get all Democrats on board? Speaker Pelosi said today She asks, is this all still on track? All right, Cecilia's figure will be appearing Congress there, but she's going to bring in progressives, moderate Democrats, a very small majority, of course, and that majority entirely in the Senate.
David, there are so many different factions right now that the president has spent much of his day meeting with all of these different groups. In fact, he's still in one of those meetings right now. You mentioned nearly 24 Democrats, liberals, moderates, party leaders. They were all here today at issue that infrastructure plan, the bipartisan $1 billion one, to improve roads and highways, regional infrastructure, and the $3.5 trillion plan to cover these social programs like child care and fighting climate change. Moderates, they are balking at that huge price tag. Progressives say it's all or nothing. They want to get these social programs covered while the White House, they've got control of the White House and it's minimal control of Congress, but the clock is ticking. Speaker Pelosi has promised moderates that there would be a vote on the infrastructure plan as early as Monday. And David, the bottom line right now, this is a key part of President Biden's agenda, and unless these moderates come to an agreement, it is at risk of collapsing.
Megan would like report from the White House. Thank you as always. We're to turn overseas and that slow motion disaster after that volcanic eruption on the Palma and Canary Islands. Tonight the pictures again here toward the sea. This is the fourth day now. Threatening to destroy and cumulus forcing 7 people from their homes. I do nothing to save this building from flames. The sea over and over again. And ABC's James Norman in La Palma again tonight.
Tonight, the 40-foot wall of lava traveling to astonished potential 1800-degree molten rocks, everything in its on its seemingly unstoppable march through Spain's LaaLaa island. True scale of the lava shooting hundreds of feet up, that can even feel its heat.
The volcano has been opened again. Authorities find it and they feel like things are under control. Those new fissures opened up. The sea went more widely and the situation was more and more unpredictable.
Volunteers are working to avoid this monster any way they can. They're digging trenches and building walls of lava to try and keep it away from boats. 400 buildings have been destroyed. More have passed away. Authorities were also given 15 minutes to evacuate the home. Their neighbour has one took her in. Now they both wait to see if the lava will come their way. She tells me it's all our work, effort, money, of our lives. My life, my partner's life, our family, and you just don't know if you can lose it in an instant.
So James Norman back with us tonight from La Palma and right there along James and again the volcano on the coastline now. You were going to face that incredible challenge trying to sort of direct the lava to keep it away from destroying more towns and more homes.
Yeah, that's right, David. The action is really coming down now. Actually, since I spoke to you last night, a new wall of lava has appeared right behind us, just in front of a roadway there. It's coming down onto the road. That is exactly what officials here are trying to battle to keep Alex away from this endless stream of lava.
David, James Norman, our thanks to you and the team again tonight. Back here at home, one more note from Washington tonight after months of talks, bipartisan police reform talks have now ended without a deal. Major sticking points, restrictions on deadly use of force, how officers should be prosecuted, and on no knock warrants. Also divisions among police unions consulted during the talks. Tonight expressing disappointment and saying he will look for a path forward, including more potential executive actions. Back here tonight, we are tracking severe storms at this hour from Detroit all the way to the northeast and tornado watch in parts of Pennsylvania. And they're talking winds potentially up to 70 miles per hour in some spots.
The computer sales to report to begin a 17-year sentence.
Let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
How do you do that?
Now, join the search following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover remains of a global manhunt. Can you help catch this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcast.
These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
what is it that you really want to know? You need to know.
Today, just get through your day.
What's big these days? Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
TV3. What you need to know. Streaming on ABC News Live. It's all about you.
Why the fascination with breakfast? Figure out what's really out there.
I know my heart they did this. It's a time of suspicion. The Indians are really tough.
You don't know where the truth is going to be difficult to find. Unless you try to find it. This is ABC. We're surrounded by exclusive
My question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Tonight we are tracking those severe storms at this hour, including a tornado watch for parts of Pennsylvania and heavy rain moving from Detroit to the northeast overnight and tomorrow. Waves on Lake Michigan could reach 18 feet. Flash flood watches in effect for 11 states, including from Michigan to New Jersey. Forecasters say tornadoes possible in Pittsburgh and Erie through late tonight. Wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour. When we come back here tonight, paying tribute to a beloved actor from Sex and the City.
It's an extraordinary story. A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought.
They catch her for 25 years. How do you do that?
Now, join the search following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads. The whole manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive? Have you seen this man? Have you seen this man? Enjoy the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcast.
These powerful stories of our time.
And these days, what you need to know.
Seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know? You need to know.
To help you not just get through your day.
But to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
TV3. What you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live. It's all about you.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it. Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs. Right now, it's important to you. How are you? Yeah, so what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live? What will you do? I guess I just found out. What will you do marathon? 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live. My favorite show. This is what Live is all about. This is ABC News Live. We're surrounded by exclusive
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Tonight, co-stars and fans paying tribute to actor Willie Garson.
The scenery, the music, the sets, the costumes, so neat.
I only like it because she gets to sleep for 100 years and she doesn't age.
Best known for her role in Sex and the City, later on White Collar, even battling cancer. His
His last tweet: "Be kind to each other always, love to all, approach kindness." Willie Garson was 57. When we come back, one incredible park ranger. She just turned 100, and what they've done tonight.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes.
It's the show America wants and America needs right now. This is what we need. Let's go. Watching Saturdays on ABC News Live. What would you do? I guess I'm starting now. What would you do marathon? 12 to 6 Eastern. Every Saturday on ABC News Live.
This is ABC News Live.
We're surrounded by
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Straight to you anytime.
I just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for staying with us.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about everything.
What is it that you really want to know? Need to know?
To help you not just every day.
but to make the most of it.
Smarter. Feel better.
Feel happy.
Well, how about the third hour of Good Morning America?
TV3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live. It's all about you.
ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu. Now streaming. ABC News is America's number one news. Number one news magazine. Friday nights, number one daytime talk show. Number one in streaming. This ABC News magazine. Number one news.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's number one most watched morning show. ABC's Morning America.
Now with so much on the line, more Americans are turning to deep more in ABC's World News Tonight than any other program across all of television.
Funding tonight here to Park Ranger, most definitely America Strong. Tonight, Betty Reed Susking and a milestone. She's from Richmond, California, and already the oldest park ranger in America. Tonight, she has turned 100. Betty opened Detroit in 1991. She says she still has a lot of work to do. Her uniform, ranger hat on, and the rosy ribbon World War II Homefront National Historical Park, which commemorates the contributions of women during World War II. Betty started there at the age of 85. She shares the stories of women during that time, the stories of black women, what she faced too. Tonight, Betty's community are honoring her, naming this middle school after her. Betty creating the ribbon, and Betty Reed Susking the birthday cake, on top, little Melanie Armstrong, on the right there. She's Betty's great-great-niece. And right here,
Hello, David.
Betty the Park Ranger at 100.
People need heroes. And I'm maybe one of those. I think it's important to go and follow our passions. Follow your passions.
And Betty reminding all of us tonight, it is never too late to know our history.
It is so important that we go back and revisit history as it was lived in order to get a better time against what's
Happy 100th birthday, Betty.
extraordinary story.
A computer system is supposed to record tourism to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one you run.
How do they catch 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive? Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen, and join the all hunt wherever you get your podcast.
It was LaaLaa skills of all time. And Nightline. Now streaming on ABC
How about a third hour of Good Morning America?
TV3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live. It's all about you.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it. Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now. This is what will you do? Let's go. How are you? Yeah, so what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live? What would you do? I guess I just found out. What would you do marathon? 12 to 6 Eastern every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
This is what being alive is all about. This is ABC News Live.
We're surrounded by exclusive.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Straight to you.
I just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us. The mysterious boyfriend. What is he? Tell me everything. He's the chief executive and she's a kid.
They have committed multiple federal crimes.
The White House disposed of him like a piece of trash. And they will do the same to you.
Impeachment and American Crime Story, Tuesdays at 10, only on FX. American We're Americans choose ABC News. Source.
A Russian grandmother fights off a young mother on the streets of Moscow. The 70-year-old held firm and made the attacker drag her along the street for several feet. As you can see, after a brief fight over a bag, the would-be robber gave up and ran away after a Good Samaritan got involved. The attacker, who was arrested, later came back to the scene to apologize. Tonight, major news about booster shots for adults 65 and older and those at high risk of COVID. Those Pfizer boosters could be ready to go as soon as Friday. This as the latest Delta surge shows signs of slowing down. But doctors tonight warn the real way to end the pandemic remains with more vaccinations. The White House estimates about 71 million eligible people are still unvaccinated. And tonight, a report on the startling learning loss over the past 18 months in this pandemic. The students falling behind and what's being done tonight to change a problem that existed long before the pandemic.
Children that were already struggling before. As much as I love Kelly Clarkson, she got it wrong. What doesn't kill you doesn't make you stronger.
Tonight, President Biden's stalled agenda. The White House tells our Cecilia Vega we're in a pivotal period. Mrs. Biden tries to clean up that diplomatic standoff with France. And in Congress tonight, police reforms promised after the death of George Floyd are now officially dead. So what comes next? Cecilia Vega and Rachel Scott are standing by. Tonight, the urgent manhunt for the boyfriend of Gabby Petito after the FBI confirmed they had found Petito's remains. Authorities are now searching a 25,000-acre nature preserve. Dive teams going into the murky waters, tips from the public. Also, this case brings renewed attention tonight to the nearly 90,000 active missing persons cases. 40% of those people of color. Tonight, the wrath of a major volcano. Nepal's unrelenting 40-foot wall of lava destroying homes and forcing mass evacuations in Spain's Canary Islands. An entire village in its path. Our James Longman is there. And tonight, our conversation with the nation's first Native American cabinet secretary on the impact of her historic appointment and how she's laying off her heritage to tackle a controversial agenda.
Conflicted about taking a job in the federal government, given that history.
Well, no, because my dad was a 30-year career Marine. My mother was in the Navy. I came from a family of service to our country.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Nancy Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We begin tonight with breaking news on a high-stakes decision on boosters. The FDA has now authorized a booster dose of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine, which means Americans can now receive a shot as soon as Friday. The decision vaccinated, the CDC out with a forecast that suggests cases, hospitalizations, and deaths will begin to go down. And by next March, the worst may be behind us. Steve Wilson leads us off from the CDC in Atlanta tonight.
The FDA is saying yes tonight to the Pfizer booster shots, which means that Americans who've already gotten 2 shots of the Pfizer vaccine could get a third as early as Friday.
It's a reasonable decision to provide a third dose to people for whom it appears that immunity is waning and severe infection is increasing risk in the age of Delta.
At the CDC, they're still debating tonight who all should be getting the extra shot, focusing on people who are 65 or older, or who have health conditions that put them at greater risk to COVID, or frontline workers like nurses or grocery store workers. The shots are already made from the South medical team has found that in states where the fewest people are vaccinated, the death rates are nearly 4 times higher than in states that lead the country in vaccinations. Health officials now believe that an extra dose will eventually become the new standard.
At the end of the day, I believe the correct regimen is going to be 2 doses at first, and a few months later, the third dose. For J&J, it'll be the first dose, followed a few months later by the second dose.
Americans who've gotten Moderna and Johnson & Johnson vaccines will have to wait at least a few weeks for approval from the federal government on boosters. But already, 2 million Americans with compromised immune systems have been cleared to get a third shot from Pfizer. 34-year-old Allison Rogers has Crohn's disease. She got her extra shot in Portland.
I wouldn't be too hesitant about it, especially if you've already gotten the second one. The third one is kind of a breeze. I got it on a Saturday, and by Monday I was back at work.
All this planning for millions of booster shots for Americans have people around the world looking sideways at drug makers, wondering why they're not sharing their formulas with manufacturers and countries where there isn't enough vaccine to go around. On a virtual COVID summit today with the United Nations, President Biden announced that the U.S. is now agreeing to buy another 500 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine for the rest of the world, for a total of 1.1 billion doses that America is giving to people overseas.
For every 1 shot we've administered to date in America, we have now committed to do 3 shots to the rest of the world.
President Biden trying to promote some vaccine equality worldwide. Steve Wilson joins us now from the CDC. Steve, President Biden pledging to help the world, but the numbers right now show a long way to go in order to reach a goal of 70% of the world vaccinated by this time next year.
That's right. The numbers show that about 32% of the world has been vaccinated. The Biden administration has sort of moved that goal. They're trying to see if they can raise the number to about 40% of the world vaccinated by the end of this year. And one of the ways they're, of course, trying to do that is by donating vaccines to other countries where there is, of course, great issues about getting the amount that they need to get people vaccinated and get those vaccines distributed.
And Steve, there's a new forecast out tonight looking at COVID cases through March. Walk us through that.
So this is a new forecast that looks at cases and the number of deaths. And researchers tonight say that it looks hopeful. And when they look at this model, it tells them that they're expecting to see the number of cases and deaths to continue to fall through the spring. And that is, of course, if we don't see an outbreak of another dangerous variant.
And fingers crossed on that. Steve Wilson, thanks to you. Joining us now to give us more context about all things COVID, especially those booster shots, is ABC News medical contributor Dr. Darian Sutton. Doctor, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Let's get right into it. Who should and shouldn't be lining up for a booster shot?
Well, the official jury is still out as the FDA is waiting to reconvene for their official decision tomorrow. And then, as was stated, we'll likely see recommendations from the CDC after that. I suspect that the votes are very clear. It seems to focus on those who are high risk in terms of those who are over the age of 65 and over those who are immune compromised or immune suppressed. And also now we're starting to talk about the discussion of including those who are highly exposed. So people like myself and other emergency physicians who may not fall in any type of a high-risk category, but in terms of our high risk of exposure, it's still prevalent. So I'm suspecting that there will be a lot of discussions on how to protect both of these groups.
And what about people who already had COVID and experienced some kind of natural immunity? Should they be getting another dose?
This is a great question, and it's something that is probably one of the most common questions I've been getting. Does natural immunity exist? I don't have to say in short it does, but there's a lot of issues around that. We've seen some preprint studies and studies that have yet to be peer-reviewed that have helped us to understand that those who have had a recent infection are unlikely to get reinfected, but we also know that those who have had natural infections have variability in their immune responses, and we also know that we don't officially have a test to confirm who is immune and who isn't. And we know that those who have been naturally infected and subsequently get vaccinated have the highest level of protection. So my recommendation stands, as for most of the doctors in America, is my recommendation, which is that regardless of your past infection status, you should do it.
And you're not accepting the booster shot is really exactly the same, correct? So you have the first shot and the second shot, this is the third shot, which is just like the first and second they've had, correct?
It's just like the first and second. I suspect that as time goes on, we'll see some more results from the Moderna result regarding the booster vaccine, because I do know that they have the volume. So I think that when that discussion comes into play, that volume of the Moderna vaccine might be lower than the first.
Helpful to understand that. And where do we stand now in terms of treatments for COVID, like remdesivir and monoclonal antibody treatments?
We've come so long in terms of where we started. Initially in the pandemic, as you know, despite this pandemic, Europe, which was the epicenter of our outbreak, and I can best describe that as a controlled or controlled chaos crisis. Since that time has progressed, we began to understand what it actually looks like, who is at risk, and medications that come into play, including but not limited to things like the antiviral medication, Regeneron, synthetic antibody, as well as prednisone and other immunomodulators. We're using them every day, but I have to say that COVID-19 is an intricate and becoming complicated of a disease. So we use them with the understanding that each and every patient is different. But all of that being said, the one treatment that prevents the progression of COVID-19 to hospitalization and death that we know is effective and safe is vaccines.
So that being said, what would you say to people who are willing to risk being unvaccinated and then put their hopes in these treatments instead?
I think that when patients bring that discussion to me, I realize that they have an understanding or misunderstanding of risk, the risk in different proportions, which is not necessarily accurate. We do know that COVID-19 vaccines have been heavily studied and proven effective in keeping people out of the hospital. And waiting for a miracle treatment while you're unvaccinated during an ongoing pandemic, choosing a medication that might provide you more risk in terms of any benefit at all, is really the highest risk option. So it remains the standard that the lowest risk option to prevent your course of disease, hospitalization, and death from COVID-19, and even prevent you from getting infected and possibly transmitting it to others, is still getting vaccinated.
The state of Tennessee announced that they'll reserve the use of monoclonal treatments for the most vulnerable, which essentially means the unvaccinated who have become infected. Why would they do that?
When I look at this, it's a center of frustration that I have to say that we're looking at Tennessee, which is one of the lowest vaccination rate states, deal with the crisis and ration repair. And in the setting of the 2 years, almost 2 years of the pandemic, in a highly industrialized country like the United States, we should not have this 2 years after the onset of this pandemic. And when I see that, I understand that each patient has a responsibility to themselves, but I try to convey my frustration to those who are creating this misinformation and leading these people to taking high-risk decisions that they don't realize is high risk. And I think, unfortunately, we'll continue to see this until we have more than 25% of the American population vaccinated.
Do you believe that an unvaccinated person against COVID carries any level of responsibility for choosing to not get the shot?
I think they do. I personally think that they do. But again, when I'm looking at talking to a patient who is making that decision and choosing a high-risk option, I inform them that, when we're talking about mandates, this is not a mandate to get vaccinated. It is a mandate to make a decision. And if you choose not to get vaccinated, you're choosing the higher-risk decision. With that choice comes consequences. You may not have access to communities in terms of public spaces or airplanes. Someone to sit next to in a restaurant. And it's because you chose a higher-risk decision. So I think that it really does fall on the person. But you have to understand that with each and every choice comes certain consequences that we have to
I have a young son, and the pandemic started right before his birthday, right before he was turning 6. So when he was 5, and he was like, well, when is all this going to be over? And we thought, his birthday was going to be this summer, and I gave him all these, kind of false deadlines of when it's going to end. So this is kind of a self-reflection. How much closer do you think that we are to not necessarily a life without COVID, because that may not be possible, but less day-to-day fear about it?
I have to agree with those trajectories that recently discussed, I think that when it comes spring, we'll be looking at a very different picture of COVID-19. I think, as you said, COVID-19 will likely always be in our environment, and unfortunately, position, it will likely always be in my process when I'm trying to diagnose a patient. But I do think that as time goes on, people get vaccinated, and we start to see a 10% of these rates of COVID-19 infections, hospitalizations, and deaths will start to become just a normal life. But I have to take that grain of salt and a moment of caution, because with each and every outbreak that exists outside of the United States, which is why vaccine equity is so important, it increases the risk of the development of new strains that impact all of our health. So it's just a point that we can focus on what's going on within the United States, but also paying attention and making sure that we take care of people outside the United States as much as we possibly can.
Dr. Pumpkin, as always, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Now to the political showdown in Washington as the White House works to salvage the president's sweeping domestic agenda. The president held marathon meetings with members of his own party today, trying to bridge the divides between moderate and progressive Democrats. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi saying after she left the meeting, they quote, "We are calling everybody's good and our work is almost done." So let's bring in ABC's chief White House correspondent in Vegas. So Democrats are still deeply divided on the route forward on the two infrastructure packages on the table. Where do things stand? And what's the path forward on actually getting to a vote on these measures?
Well, I think it remains to be seen in terms of Speaker Pelosi's level of confidence. She is really expressing some confidence. These meetings are still going on here this evening right now, Lizzie, as we speak. There are so many factions involved in all this that President Biden, you said, held a series of marathon meetings. He had to meet with each of these groups separately. We're talking about more than nearly 24 Democrats here at the White House today, liberals, moderates, top leaders in the party. At issue, you said it, it's this bipartisan infrastructure plan. The traditional infrastructure, $1 trillion for that to improve roads and highways. And then that plan, the $3.5 trillion one that's going to cover these social programs, things like childcare and fighting climate change. Moderates are balking at this price tag. Progressives say, look, it's all or nothing. We've got control of the White House. We've got control of Congress. Minimal control, but they've got it. They want to get these social programs covered while they believe they can. The clock is ticking, though. Speaker Pelosi has set this deadline for Monday to have this vote on traditional infrastructure. And the big picture right now, Lindsay, is that the Democrats, unless they can get this done, could end up seeing the president's a key part of the president's agenda collapse if they can't come to an agreement.
Meanwhile, there's this looming fiscal battle over raising the debt limit, which Republicans have said they'll oppose, even though it doesn't authorize new spending, but instead pays off previous debt. Explain where things stand with that tonight and some of the warnings that we're hearing for the economy if the debt limit isn't raised soon.
Yeah, we're talking about keeping the government open essentially through past September 30th. And you mentioned these economists. I mean, they received some dire warnings saying this is devastating consequences on the economy. Moody's is saying that the consequences will be catastrophic. We're talking about millions of jobs if they can't get past this September 30th date. But Republicans, they're essentially saying we're going to move the temporary move that Democrats want to fund the government at least through December 3rd. Mitch McConnell was saying, hey, you guys have control. You got to find the votes on your own. A lot of folks are calling that given that the Republicans under Mitch McConnell wanted Democrats to get their document passed under President Trump. The Republicans have control, but at this point, the White House Lindsay was asked if they're planning for contingencies. They say they are, but they still have hope that this can get done. This deal can be reached in 8 days.
Cecilia, we're bringing for us from the White House. Cecilia. Now to the failure of bipartisan police reform talks, which ended today without a deal. This comes more than a year after the nation was galvanized by the death of George Floyd. Sparking nationwide protests and calls for action. The Biden administration, members of both parties in Congress, meeting with Floyd's family this spring and saying that they were united on addressing systemic issues in policing, negotiating for months behind the scenes. So what happened? What went wrong? Let's bring in ABC's congressional correspondent Rachel Scott. And Rachel, I'm thinking back to when President Biden made that address to the joint sessions, and he said he wanted to have a bill by Memorial Day, by the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd's death. And the bill, it was 4 months after that deadline, so he gave. Explain why these talks broke down with data points on both sides. They just couldn't seem to reach a deal on.
Yeah, let's be right about that. That deadline came and went. The Lakers tried to set another deadline. That came and went. And then today, after months of negotiations, you have both sides here just throwing in the towel. Senator Walker, I'm told, called Senator Tim Scott
from the table, bringing an end to the months of bipartisan negotiations when it comes to police reform. A few sticking points here, I'm told, restrictions when it comes to use of deadly force, that national database to track police misconduct. Then you have the issue of qualified immunity. That was a big sticking point in the Democratic Party. That's something that's protects officers from lawsuits. Some progressives said they would not vote for anything unless it was in there and changed. Republicans stood firm on that. And then you also have the involvement of police unions. That really did complicate a lot of negotiations, especially this summer. Sources tell me that during those meetings,